So I was raised in a home that was really riddled with a lot of alcoholism and abuse. I wasn't raised in church. My parents both are from here, and they, I look back now and I know that they grew up with a lot of issues themselves that they didn't really work through. So the way they coped was with alcoholism. They finally got a divorce when I was 6. And when I was 8, for the first time, I was sexually abused. And that was just kind of what a lot of my childhood looked like, was just cycles of abuse. It was being physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused. And it just seemed to be what my life looked like. At 14, my mom and my stepdad got divorced, and I really did think life was going to improve. But unfortunately, my mom got into drugs and life did get much worse. So I ended up moving out, and my mom lost custody of all of us. And so I went to college, and I was living, very much for myself. I was, doing the sorority life. I was drinking. That was something, alcohol was available to me from, I think I remember at like 12 or 13, my mom would take me to the liquor store with her, and I could pick things out for myself. And I continued that into college, and I continued just living for myself. I was dating boys, all kinds of relationships outside of God's will. And I met my husband. At the time, we were dating, in love really quickly, and we moved in together. And I was pregnant really shortly after. I was 20 at the time, and I knew that right then I had to find a church. And so that was what I did. I set out and I found a church. At the time, my husband and I were married, or we had gotten married, and started going to this church, and we ended up getting baptized together, and just really felt like for the first time I was living my life how I had intended to live it. And we decided that we were going to try for our second child. I was almost done with school. And that was kind of the beginning of the spiral for us that we went through. We had gotten pregnant, and then I miscarried. It was right before Christmas, and so it was really painful at that time, but that was just the beginning. Because a couple months later, my dad died of a massive heart attack. In my mind, I think I thought at that time that if you give your life to God, then it is free of trial. And he showed me very quickly that that was not the case. So had decided through the death of my dad that we weren't going to continue to try at that time, but I was already pregnant. When I was 37 weeks pregnant, my mom died suddenly as well. And I delivered our daughter the next week. I think there was so much pain and so much hurt that was going on through all of that was really when things just were starting to overflow. At that point, I just knew I was like, I was at a huge point of surrender at that point. I put our house on the market. It sold in 5 days, and we moved to Missouri to be with family. It was really rock bottom for us. It was a time where I was crying out to God in just confusion. Why would you do all of these things to us, to my family? Why would you do these things to me if I am trying to live my life for you? That year changed everything for me. When we moved up here, we were so passionate about finding another church that was going to be like what we had back in Arkansas. And we walked in, and the first person to meet us at the door was Pastor Eddie. And from that point on, he built a relationship with my husband. And for the first time, I felt like I knew what it looked like to be a Christ follower when outside of the expectations I had had as far as it being a perfect lifestyle. For me, there's been so much pain in my life that now I look back and it really is just overshadowed by God's love for me. I used to look back at that and not understand at all why God has done this in my life, but now I look back and it's been 5 years since I really think that he began to truly move in my life, and now I look and I see that all of that did have to happen for a reason. It had to happen so I knew that there is no one on a pedestal above the Lord, not my husband, not my parents. There's no one in your life that is going to make such an impact and set you free like Christ will. And God has just truly, he's changed my life, and he's changed my kids' lives, and he's changed my kids' lives. And I wish I could just go back and tell the younger version of myself that the Lord's greater, and that none of it's necessary. I've spent a lot of my life in worry. I've spent so much time trying to control and and have the outcomes be what I want them to be. And I think if I could just go back and tell myself that God's outcome is so much better than what I have for myself, that it would have taken off a lot of pressure, a lot of hurt, and a lot of worry.